Question
Okay.
number one, if you had to choose, would you rather have a smaller government providing fewer services or a bigger government providing more services? See,
Okay.
part of
And
the
I'm
problem with these things is that, there's not a lot of room for nuance.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess it says if you had to choose, so one can make assumptions like right now, would your ideal world enlarge in the government or would it shrink it,
Yeah,
as a byproduct of
to go
other
with
things?
to go with Miss Marvel from the comics, not the show, to embiggen the government.
Doing big in the government, quite
Right.
right. So
So what'd you pick?
I'm picking bigger, but it looks like, so if you click on that, another question, like a sub question in this one pops up.
Okay.
And it
So
says,
bigger government. When you say you favor a bigger government
yeah,
providing more services, do you think it would be better to modestly expand on current government services or greatly expand on them?
that seems like kind of the same question.
Well, basically, like, I think it's kind of asking, like, okay, does that mean like full health care? And does that mean that, we're going all in on this, that, and the other thing?
It's kind of like
Or does it mean
how
like
how much bigger do you want?
make
Like
this
that's
system a
kind of
little
just
bit
a
better?
how much bigger question. So I'm
Right.
picking greatly expand.
Greatly. I went with modestly. All right. Apparently, we're going to be at each other's throats in the Civil War.
Clearly.
Which of the following statements comes closest to your view? America's openness to people from all over the world is essential to who we are as a nation. Or, if America is too open to people from all over the world, we risk losing our identity as a nation.
Oh, I'm definitely picking the first one.
I am
Yeah.
too, because I like to think about, well, I'd like to think of any person traveling through the time stream as being somewhat fluid with what their identity is. So I think if you're holding on to an identity, I think that's kind of a no-no.
Yeah, and I think, our identity as a nation changes like every 10 years anyway.
Yeah,
Like
well, every once in a while, I know these guys who are just all like, yeah, man, I'm like 40. I never changed. She's the one who changed. And I'm all, you're 40 and you never changed. Like,
right.
I wouldn't brag about this, man. You might want to get some counseling.
Exactly. Yeah, the identity of our nation is supposed to change as the world in general. Like,
Yeah, I
like we're
like
not the only thing in the world.
I like the whole melting pot thing, though. But,
Yeah.
you know, maybe I'm indoctrinated. All right, why don't you ask me the next one? Let's see.
Okay, yeah. So, question 3 of 16. In general, would you say experts who study a subject for many years are usually better at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people? Usually worse at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people? Or neither better nor worse at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people?
I don't see how anyone could think it's anything other than one.
That's where I am, pretty much.
Because, I mean,
But
somebody who studies a subject for many years, of course, is better at that subject. Now, are there still people in there that studied and went down the wrong rabbit hole and they're wrong? Yeah, of course. But I mean, statistically, most of those people would be better at that topic. It's like I got a math problem and I can either take it to a mathematician or a beautician.
right.
I'm going to pick the mathematician.
Right. The beautician might
But if I
surprise
need a
you.
haircut, I am
but
not
like,
going to the mathematician. You know,
yeah, well, you say that, but I've actually had someone who we both know say to me before that experts basically are just like arrogant about their beliefs and don't know any
yeah,
better
and I
than
get
anyone
that.
else.
And I think that stems from this overall attitude that the entire education system or science system or the entire system is stacked against them.
Right, some kind of conspiracy.
Which I think is a really terrible way to live. And it's also a way of not adapting to the changing world. I mean,
right.
Again, I feel like the big argument between conservatives and liberals is stay the same or go back and move forward and change. Those are the two sides.
Well, that's
I just don't
literally
see
what
where stay the same and
conservative
go
and
back
liberal.
really works for anything. I mean, I understand
Yeah.
like we need to go forward, but not with that. I mean, that'd be a great argument. You know, that's an accessible argument, but
Right. Like in theory, change isn't always good, but like in practice, I don't know that trying to roll back like a social movement has ever been a great idea. Right. Like,
plus you only really want to go back to something that's perfect.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
don't think there was ever a point that it was perfect. I mean, there were
Yeah.
points that certain aspects of it maybe were better, but I don't think anybody could argue that there was a point that it was perfect. Like if we lived in that moment,
Yeah.
everything would be just fine. You know,
I mean, I can definitely point to like individual things like in the 20th century that is like maybe we should bring that one policy back, right? But like if you gave me a time machine and were like, hey, what decade do you want to go to? I would be like, is the future an option? Like, am
yeah,
I
and wouldn't
capped at
that?
this decade? I
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
want to go
mean,
back.
I guess there's a question. Would you rather travel into the future or into the past to see what's going on? Maybe we
Yeah.
need to just ask that. We'll put that on Facebook and see if we can judge people's
I think
political
there's
typology.
probably a lot of more utility in general in going into, well, I mean, you could get rich on stocks in the past, but you could do that in the future too if you're coming back.
Oh, I ain't
I don't
coming
know.
back.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. I don't think I would, but I wouldn't want to overshoot it. You know, if you get Mad Max world, like,
Oh, right, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
you
that's
want
true.
to aim for a reasonable amount of time in the future. Right?
Well, you can just do like Futurama and keep going and come back around again.
I mean, yeah, always a plan.
Right.
And you know what? There's actually, this also reminds me, Donald Trump said, I think a couple of years ago, there was an interview where he was asked about climate science. And there was like, well, the experts say this. And he kind of like interrupted the interviewer a little and was like, well, I don't think they really know. You know, he was basically saying the field is bunk. And you know what? That's how I feel about economics. So like, I think that kind of can be true, but like, ultimately the reason I feel that way about economics is because there's been a lot of like meta-analysis of sort of the field and the general like predictions economists make, and they're no better than a coin flip. So like I think that way because of a tangible statistical reason.
I and in their minds, maybe they are too. I guess. I mean, I get what you're saying. That's how they're looking at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, what do we got next?
Yeah. All right. So the next one, moving on. Thinking about increased trade of goods and services between the US and other nations in recent decades, would you say that the US has gained more than it has lost because increased trade has helped lower prices and increase the competitiveness of some US businesses, or lost more than it has gained because increased trade has cost jobs in manufacturing and other industries and lowered wages for some US workers?
Well, this is one of those tough economy questions where this
Yeah,
is a
this is
very
really
broad
hard.
question for a lot of different sectors. You know, in some areas, absolutely, we have gained. I work in one of them.
Right. Yeah.
In other sectors, we definitely have lost. Um,
But it's not going to be like we lost. It's not like the law of equivalent exchange, right? So it's asking which do you think
yeah.
we've
The
gained
hard
more than
part
we've
is, do I
lost?
feel that I have a good enough understanding of all these different
That's exactly
sectors in
right.
order to
Yeah.
answer this question? I think that we've gained.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that I feel that we did it the right way or in the right places and that it shouldn't be done differently.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think there should be a little bit more holding on to American jobs and American services just solely by Americans. It doesn't even have to be a legal thing, but just solely because, like, I do want to help the world, but I understand that I have to help my family first, then my neighbor, and
Sure.
then so
Yeah.
on and so forth, then create something safe and established that I can then reach out and help the entire world. So I do think it's important to sort of keep some of that at home, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm putting I think I'm pretty similar. I'm saying gained, but also, and this isn't part of the question, I think that's a bad thing for the world. Like I think we've definitely gained because we've forced other countries to accept unequal trade deals using, you know, our military might and stuff. But that's like bad for those countries.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is D. Snyder, that's S-N-I-D-E-R. I have been asked to come here to present my views on, quote, the subject of the content of certain sound recordings and suggestions that recording packages be labeled to provide a warning to prospective purchasers of sexually explicit or other potentially offensive content, unquote.